Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Back to that lemon light city, sweet home Chicago.
Hi there, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman in the business today, Sonny Hersh, and your host, Avi Meyers.
Marty Levinson, king of the wild country. Hi there, everybody. Avi Meyers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hersh and myself. Check us out on the web. Over 35,000 shows watched, even more than that. That's today's count, not when this is on the air. ntnm.org. Community policing, very important. We're big fans of it. We want to really give special thanks to the new commander, Steve Koulouris, who's doing a bang-up job. We love you too, Bruce Rotner, and we're really glad that you got the promotion up to Deputy Chief of Patrol for Area 5. And you're 3. Sorry about that. Sonny corrected me. We're in the mix. By the way, Sonny also underwent special training by the FBI and in his quest to become part of their top 10. And we wish you luck along those lines. We understand you're hovering somewhere around number 13 or 14, but pretty soon you might be seeing Sonny's face in post offices everywhere. In terms of Commander Koulouris, I think I really appreciate the stuff he's doing. He's trying to be very proactive in getting to problems before they start. There is a new camera at Devon, California now that the police have put in that he requested almost right away. He sees a problem, he reacts to it very quickly. And even though I've said this on a couple other shows, I want to say it again. I especially appreciate him putting up with me. That's a sign of a true gentleman. So, because sometimes I don't know if I want to put up with me. In any event, want to also let you know that if you missed the live meeting, this is something Sonny and I did that's brand new. There's a new community council, the West Ridge Community Council. People like Mike Moses, Neil Stein. I know the alderman's involved, Amy Zander's involved, a number of the businessmen are involved. The idea is to get a community council that's not just a political organization, but something that people in the community might actually want to participate and do some good for the community, as opposed to engineer somebody's candidacy. And their very first meeting was aired live on the internet, which is so cool. And people were able to email in questions, very interactive. And this way, the revisionist historians and creative fascists of our neighborhood are unable to recreate what happened when anybody can see it for themselves. And they're very upset about that. But that's too bad. If you go to our website at ntnm.org, there will be a direct link there for you to be able to watch the show in its entirety, which aired live in its entirety, which I really think is taking advantage of technology. And rather than somebody claim there's 200 people in a meeting when there wasn't even a third of that, you can see what really happened for yourself, good, bad, and ugly. It is a pleasure to have the commissioner of the 13th District of Cook County, somebody who has been a frequent guest on the show, and somebody who, as far as I'm concerned, has always stood and wanted to do good things for the community as a government official, Commissioner Larry Suffredin. How are you?
Thanks, Avi. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. And why don't you tell us what's going on in the wonderful world of Cook County?
Well, Avi, when I go out and talk to the citizens of Cook County, I've started with a little poem, a poem that a friend of mine wrote, and it starts off like this: "How odd of God to give us Rod and Todd." And the real, since this is a show where we talk about the reality of government and politics and how they fit together, Illinois, unfortunately, has become the laughing stock of the nation. Adlai Stevenson II, when he was governor of Illinois from 48 to 52, used to have a saying, "Thank God for New Jersey, it always makes Illinois look good." Well, Governor Corzine, a son of Illinois in New Jersey these days, probably is saying, "Thank God for Illinois, it makes New Jersey look good."
Yeah.
But we have two leaders of two large governments, the 5th largest state in the Union, and if Cook County were a state, we'd be the 17th largest, who seem to have no direct interest in running and just are allowing the governments to fail and fall apart. And, the governor just a few weeks ago vetoed $600 million out of the medical side of the budget, most of that in the Medicaid program, about half of that going to Cook County and about a third of that half going to the Cook County hospital system. And without that money, we're not able to provide the kind of health care we serve. And in Cook County right now, people are concerned because taxes are high. I did vote for a 1% sales tax. I did not vote for the other 10.25% sales tax that are out there, and I really encourage citizens to talk to the elected officials who voted for those other increases. But, the 1% I did to be able to take away 1/3 of the government, or $1 billion of our $3 billion government from Todd Stroger, and that was the Bureau of Health. And I did it by getting an ordinance passed that I had drafted that creates an independent health board. It created a 14-organization nominating committee to pick names for that health board. It gave President Stroger 20 names that he could only choose from those 20. He could not add other names. And we have, I think, today an extremely forthright and bright group of health professionals and government and finance people who, for the first time, are going to run our billion-dollar healthcare system like a professional healthcare operation should be run. It's chaired these days by Warren Batts, who is a gentleman who's the former chairman of the Tupperware Company. Before that, he was the chairman of Justin Dart Kraft, the parent organization of Kraft Foods. He has done a phenomenal number of things in his life, been the chairman of the board of Children's Memorial Hospital. He has really put himself in a position to put a lot of effort in to make this work. The vice chairman is Jorge Ramirez, who's the secretary-treasurer of the Chicago Federation of Labor. On this board are two wonderful doctors, Dr. David Ansel, the chief of medicine at Rush, and Dr. Munoz, who runs a community practice on the west side. We have two people who have run large hospital systems, Sister Sheila Line, who currently is the president of Mercy Hospital, and Ben Greenspan, who is the immediately retired CEO of Mount Sinai Health System and had worked 32 years at Mount Sinai and now is a professor of healthcare at the University of Illinois. We have Quinn Golden, who is the assistant to the vice president at the University of Chicago Hospital System. We have Heather O'Donnell, who is an expert in finance and has been somebody studying how the Bush administration has continued to cut the funding to public hospitals throughout the country, and in our case, to our county hospital. We have David Carvalho, the deputy director of the Illinois Department of Public Health, who is an extremely talented lawyer and person who understands all the intricacies of how health delivery needs to work together. We have Andrea Zopp, who was the first assistant state's attorney at one point and is now as the vice president of human relations and resources at the Exelon Company, who brings a wealth of knowledge to the board and has the ability, I think, to very much do a number of things. So the makeup of this board is extremely, extremely good for the people. And we had a $284 million shortfall caused by the Bureau of Health. I think they will stop that from happening in the future. I know people weren't happy with the sales tax, but to get this kind of independence and to protect the $3 billion in investment that the taxpayers have put into this healthcare system, I think is important. And as we've talked before, to our community, healthcare is really the number one issue that people talk to me about.
It's very serious. There's no question about it. As a matter of fact, well, I know you're responsible. I mean, together with other people too, for and been about as big a champion as there is for getting a health care clinic, which you did at Toohey and Bell.
That's right. It's a wonderful clinic with the Heartland Alliance. We also got one with the Asian Human Services that's over in the Trilogy Building, and we've had access. We've got St. Francis. I went to a meeting last week. I represent New Trier Township, and it was all the elected officials who represent New Trier in any way. And the trustees of New Trier Township were talking about the one program that they're expanding. It's their food pantry. Now, this is the richest township in Cook County, and the food pantry. And they said what's happening is because people are losing their jobs, they're putting all their resources to try to keep from becoming victims of this mortgage foreclosure that's going on. And so they're feeding their families from the food pantries. And as I pointed out to them, if you've lost your job and you're using the food pantry to feed your family, you don't have health insurance. And we're getting more and more requests from people to get into the county health system who before had their own health insurance. I recently saw a study done by one of the major accounting firms that the New York Times reported on, we always talk about the 48 million Americans who don't have health insurance.
Yeah.
Well, the 158 million that do have health insurance, this survey said only 7% of them felt that their health insurance was adequate to meet a health crisis. The others feared that even with health insurance, a major illness would bankrupt their families and them. And so
As a matter of fact, so I know myself through the insurance policies I've had over the years, and at times not having an insurance policy, that there's a big difference. In once upon a time, it was not that big a deal to have a plan that would cover you, period. You know, $1,500 out of the first $5,000, it wasn't that expensive. There were policies I had with New York Life that were like that I had in the 80s that, you know, like cost like $400 or $500 for the whole year, and my max payout would be $1,500 for the entire year, no matter what. Then all of a sudden there started to be limits per year, limits on the life of the policy,
right,
and all sorts of other things. And in some ways, I hate to say it, I think that, and I'm not going to talk about this on the air in detail, but in some ways you're better off not having insurance than having insurance, and that's not good.
Well,
that's not a good situation
not
at all.
And when this survey showed that people are concerned about their co-pays and other things, and that's why the indifference that we were seeing in our Bureau of
Health. And the limitations, too, which are ridiculous from the insurance companies.
Exactly, and turning people down and getting treatments that are necessary. That's why when I looked at our Bureau of Health, a year ago, Forrest Claypool and I put together an alternative budget. We only got 7 votes. We couldn't pass it. Todd Stroger, with Republican help, put together the destruction of our Bureau of Health. We lost over 400 medical doctors, nurses, and other medical personnel. We went from 1.4 million patient visits to our clinics to 700,000.
Wow.
And what happened is those people didn't go away. Those patients have spread out, and they are now clogging the emergency rooms at Mercy and at St. Anthony's and at Mount Sinai and at Loretto and at St. Bernard's and at St. Mary's, St. Elizabeth, all of those hospitals that are teetering, especially now with the governor cutting funds. Senator Durbin and I had met, and he had suggested that a blue ribbon task force be put together to study the county health system. And it was headed by Dr. Larry Goodman, who's the CEO of the Rush Medical Center. That report said in its first finding and its first recommendation that the county health system is the key to regional health care in this area, and that if it fails, there will be a tsunami effect on all health care. Well, the changes that Todd Stroger made in our healthcare system by cutting clinics, by cutting people out from the system, has already changed our system from having 31% of our patients be those who don't qualify for any kind of health care to 58%.
Wow.
And the other thing that it did is by crowding these other hospitals, I've used this example with you before, we've put ourselves in a situation where these smaller hospitals, their emergency rooms have to go on bypass, so that when people are ill, the fire department ambulance can't take them to the nearest hospital. They have to take them to the first hospital that's open.
Right.
Fortunately, Stroger Hospital's never gone on emergency room bypass as the busiest emergency room in the nation. But there's the case that Dr. Quentin Young has written about, and you know, of the wonderful young man who was a bank teller.
Now, he was the former head of
medicine at Cook County, and he has really been an advocate for patients' cares. He's also an advocate for a single-payer system, that we need a national health insurance plan. But he talks about this young man who was a bank teller at a TCF bank in a Jewel food store. We've all seen them when we go shopping at Jewel. The bank is robbed. He is shot. The fire department had to pass 5 hospitals before it could get to an emergency room that wasn't on bypass. Young man died.
Wow.
By all accounts, one of the fine, good young man that what we all want to see in our children and people we know. But that's what was happening to our system. And the indifference that I saw from Todd Stroger to healthcare, that he put in charge of our healthcare system Dr. Robert Simon, who was the doctor who lied to all of us about the condition of Todd Stroger's father, John. When John had the stroke and they had the press conference, it was Simon who came forward and said, he's recovering, he's going to be fine. It reminded me of the way the doctors treated the stroke of Chairman Mao in China. You remember one day all of a sudden they showed grainy video of somebody swimming in the Yangtze River?
I remember he set a world record for a 3-mile swim.
Right, they said that was the 84-year-old Mao after his stroke. Well, he promised the people.
Yeah, and he had supper that night with Generalissimo Franco 4 years after he died.
Right.
So.
Well, you know, the amazing thing to me is that Dr. Simon misled us, and he was rewarded by the Stroger family in being put in charge. And what he did is help destroy
Boy, there's
the
a
system.
shock.
Yeah, it helped destroy our system. It also cost Forrest Claypool the presidency because he, in the decent person he is, stopped his campaign because of John Stroger's stroke. And then there was the sympathy vote and the belief that John Stroger would survive, which he never did. We never saw John Stroger again in public.
I voted for Forrest Claypool, that much I will say. Although he never answers my calls when I want him on the show.
Well,
I'm not going to worry about it.
He's been very busy helping Senator Obama become president of the United States.
Right.
And
But by the way, one of the things you made me realize too, and I have to get this joke out of my system, or I'm going to be thinking about this instead of what you're saying.
Okay.
When you told the Rod and Todd poem, for people who watch The Simpsons, those are Ned Flanders kids. And I think that those kids are probably a little more intelligent and a little more realistic than Ron and Todd.
Well,
they're like delusional.
Yes, it is a tragedy to see the opportunity they both have been given, and they both are blowing it. I mean, it reminds me so much of other people we've seen who had great opportunities and then blew it. Carol Moseley Braun.
Yeah.
A chance she could have been the president of the United States today had she been able to apply herself instead of getting caught up in all kind of craziness and ended up being a one-term senator. Rod and Todd do not appreciate the leadership role and the opportunity they've been given to make the quality of life in our community better. Now, on February 29th, as we were trying to close the gap in this budget, I had put forth over 10 amendments that would have helped us manage this budget better. But Todd and his allies and the Republicans voted against them. They did not want to put in good management. And so my belief was the only way to save this government and to make it even so it's there in 2010 so there can be a new president and there's something left to work with, was to vote for the 1% tax because I got a commitment that they would let me pass the ordinance I wrote on independent governance, which also changes the Procurement Act and changes the Personnel Code to allow this new board to handle what is the largest part of our government. You know, when you look at the public safety, we spend $1 billion there, but it's divided up into the state's attorney's office, the chief judge's office, the sheriff's office, the clerk of the circuit court's office. So you have 4 elected officials who are handling smaller amounts of money, and there is more efficiency there. On the administrative side, you've got our another $1 billion. And there again, you have separate elected officials. The treasurer does a very good job of using technology and saving us money. The assessor, who does a very good job in assessing $1.8 million. The Board of Review, which does a very good job, I think, in reviewing all these cases in a timely manner. And you and you've been at some of my seminars where I've done this and helped get people their property taxes lowered. But then you have offices like the Recorder of Deeds, where it is still erratic. You know, that we could be much more efficient there. You have other people like David Orr, the clerk, who's doing a really good job, who's really worked to make our election process work together. And if you need a birth certificate, a death certificate, your marriage license, those things are user-friendly. They're open on Saturday. The other day I met a young couple who was able to go in on a Saturday morning to get their license, and they get married on a Tuesday of the following week. And they were flying in from where they lived in another state, and but they were from here. I mean, he's really made that office work. But that leaves then the president's office, and you just see how this office tore down the Bureau of Health. A week ago, you may have remembered that United States Attorney Fitzgerald announced that he has filed a 94-page letter on the jail and the quality of care at the jail.
Right.
And one of the things that I find kind of a great irony here is that under the United States Constitution, an inmate at a jail has a constitutional right to health care. Citizens who haven't committed a crime do not have a constitutional right to health care. I mean, talk about an irony. But in this report, there were things that they criticized the sheriff's office for, but they also said that the new sheriff, Tom Dart, had taken care of the administrative things pretty much and was online to get those done. But the two biggest areas, and the two biggest areas that may cost us money, were health care, in that the Stroger team and Dr. Simon and Todd Stroger cut $11 million out of the Cermak Hospital budget, and they showed all kind of situations where we had not given proper health care to people who are inside. And since that's an institution where 100,000 prisoners go through there on an annual basis, and they go in and out of the communities, they stopped doing the screening for sexual transmitted diseases, for TB. Those were things that we were helping to control those disease factors for the overall community because of this in and out. The other part that they talk about in that report is the facilities and how bad they are and what condition they are. And again, the facilities are under the office of the president. So again, any time that we can take power away from Todd Stroger, we're going to do it. We did it with the Independent Health Board, and we did it with a statute that I started pushing when I first got elected to the board, which took the Juvenile Temporary Detention Center out of the president's office and put it in the chief judge's office. And to me, that's the only way we're going to survive to 2010. Now, I know this tax is not popular, but I think that one of the things we've got to understand is that sometimes unpopular acts are necessary to accomplish good. But I'm working really hard with our large retailers and smaller retailers to find if there are other alternatives to help them for anybody who's adversely affected. I met with a little lady who had a needlepoint store in Palatine, right on Lake Cook Road. I'm going to help her figure out strategies to get her more business. I've met with large retailers who tell me that some of the other large retailers in Cook County are using shell corporations up in Wisconsin to sell large orders here in Cook County, and they only pay, if they do that, the 6.25% state use tax.
Right.
And they don't pay tax for the RTA, which is a place where we need that sales tax to keep the buses, the L's, and the trains running. They don't pay municipal tax. In the city of Chicago, the mayor just this week has talked about the financial straits the city's in and how he can't raise the property tax. And they don't pay the county tax. Well, we can't have people avoiding these taxes. We have to have a level playing field. The economy is bad, but when the economy is bad, that's when people need county services.
Yeah, that's true. I never heard of taxes being repealed, but the idea, if they ever actually did raise the income tax in Springfield, which I think is the what should be done, because that cuts more fairly. Sales tax and other taxes like that, even though there's not as big a sales tax on food, is regressive to a large extent.
There is no county sales tax on food.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, understand that. We do not have it on food or medicine. I'm tired. I've been hearing auto dealers complaining about the sales tax.
Yeah.
There's no sales tax on automobile sales. We have a very low, different kind of tax on automobile sales. We do not have a sales tax, so this tax doesn't apply to them.
Yeah.
One of the things that this raises is in the November election, while we're electing our senator president, we are also going to have a referendum question on the ballot, and that question is, should there be a constitutional convention? Every 20 years, it is supposed to be there. I have been an advocate for a constitutional convention. I know it puts me at odds with a number of people who are worried that special interests would control this, but I use 4 issues.
Yeah, I just watched a debate a couple of days ago. Dawn Clark-Netsch, who's one of my favorite people.
Against Pat Quinn at the Union League. Yes, it was a very interesting debate.
Very interesting. By the way, she actually signed my petition when I ran as a Gene McCarthy delegate in 1972. That I saved, because I like her.
Well, there are 4 issues that I think we need to have citizens think about when they vote on a constitutional convention. One is the educational article. We are 48th out of 50 in funding public education in Illinois is. And the reason for that is that the language of our Constitution says the state is primarily responsible for the funding of public education. And the Illinois Supreme Court, in a case in the early 90s, said primarily does not mean the majority. And so the state continues to put fewer and fewer resources, and that's why there's such a strong burden on the property tax base to fund schools, and why you have the disparity of the funding of what it costs to fund a kid going to New Trier versus a kid going to Sullivan or Mather or Senn, the schools that are near here. So that's the first issue. We need language to clarify that and make the state primarily responsible. The second is we really do need a change in the income tax, but our current revenue article in the Illinois Constitution says we cannot have a progressive income tax. The way to level the playing field is to have a progressive income tax so that those who are fortunate enough to be doing well will pay more. The other part of that article currently says that the ratio for the rate, the flat rate for taxes, has to be 8 to 5. The personal rate is a ratio of 8 to 5 to the business rate, and that was done to keep business income tax lower. Well, businesses are going to have to step up to the plate too if we're going to fund all the needs of government. So that's the second article, that the education, the revenue. The third is judicial selection of judges. You've had how many candidates for judges on here? Wonderfully good people, but they don't win because unfortunately they have an ethnic name. Unfortunately, they're not running in the right place.
Some of the best ones,
best people
like
lose.
Al Greiman is an example.
Well, Alan Greiman, who's been the chief judge of the chairman of the executive committee of the Illinois Appellate Court, didn't make it. We only had one candidate with a Jewish surname win countywide,
and which is the first time in 12 years any Jewish person won.
And why did he win?
And by the way, because there were 4 non-Jewish people who pretty much evenly split the vote. It was very similar to what happened with Anita Alvarez, where, a woman running against these 5 guys who split the vote a certain way that 26% could win. He also got 26%, but everybody else got like 18 or 19.
Right, but one other factor
and he's
that
also
helped him
tremendously qualified.
One of the other things that happened.
We're talking about Michael Hyman.
Yeah, Michael Hyman hired a reformed ex-convict to help him in the African American community. And people tried to make a news story out of that. Front page of the Sun.
That was front page. I'll bet that helped him win because I'll bet it got more black votes.
African American people saw here was a guy who was committed to those who could turn their lives around. I represented Alderman Walter Burnett when he got his pardon so he could run for the city council. We need examples of people who can turn their lives around. So merit selection of judges is the third issue. And the final issue, and this may be the issue that decides if we have a con or not, and that is recall. I think that people right now know that they need some kind of a safety valve. Well, I would think the election should be the process as I try to figure out strategies on how to keep county government going for the next 2.5 years while Todd Stroger's there. And hopefully that's all I got to worry about is 2.5 years. And for the state, while Rod Blagojevich is there for 2.5 years, recall would have given us a different approach. And, when I look and see how Gray Davis was able to be recalled when he made unpopular decisions, recall is not a bad thing. And California survived because of that. When I look and see, by the way, how quickly Elliot Spitzer left as governor of New York, here we have the malaise of government as 2 leaders who just kind of flounder and don't do anything, but there's not enough to remove them from office, and there's no mechanism for removal. So I really hope that you'll look at the Constitutional Convention referendum issue and vote yes. If you think back to 1968 when we had the last one, well, Dawn Netsch, who you've mentioned,
right,
young lawyer who went on to greater things. She wasn't in the legislature when she ran. Rich Daley wasn't in the legislature when he was elected to Con, and went on to things. Mike Madigan wasn't elected to the legislature when he went to Con and went on to other things. And there are other examples of people who served in that Con. Now, I think there are 42 of the original delegates still alive, and some people think we won't get a new constitutional convention until all of them have left us. And I'm sure that they're all looking for long lives, so that could be another 40 years because this referendum happens every 20.
Yeah.
But maybe it'll be close enough, if it doesn't pass, that it'll cause the General Assembly, which is the only way we can amend the Constitution, to get the General Assembly to put some of these issues on the ballot.
Well, I would love, the General Assembly has been a disappointment in and of itself. And by the way, I would love to see them invoke some sort of law for the retroactive abortion of Rod and Todd. From my standpoint, email can go with them too, but that's another story. I'm sorry, I'm not.
You were talking about email, the technology, or the fact that Senator Jones's family was ahead of their times when they named their son Email.
No,
it's Email. I'm sorry.
I just, you know what? When I got to tell you, when people ask me which is more, I used to throw this question to different people. I had Steve Rhodes on the show, or anybody else that's not an elected official. I would say, which branch of government you think is the most corrupt or the worst? I really vote for as bad as things are, it's really a head scratcher. I got to vote for the state this year.
Well, and you use the word corrupt, and I think we need to be careful because if there is corruption, people should be, and people know about it. They need to go to the United States Attorney, and they need to go to the state's attorney because we need to get corruption where there's intentional acts.
One thing I think
what we really have here is irresponsible and lackadaisical government that just is not. It doesn't reach the level of corruption, but the indifference is
actually much of this isn't legal. I mean, much of this is legal. I'm sorry. What I'm saying is that it's almost a crime that some of this stuff is legal. And a lot of it is legal. At this point, though, we're just about out of time.
Okay.
So I want to thank Commissioner Larry Suffredin. And first of all, I think it's immoral that well, whatever. But, I'm not going to worry about that. Thank you, Sonny Hersh. Thanks, entire technical crew. Join us every single, whatever this is. Join us on YouTube, ntnm.org, Community Policing. caps24.org. I want to wish you luck. And, Larry Suffredin, our guest, thank you so much. And take care, everybody. Bye-bye.